On today's episode, we have Gideon Van Eeden. Gideon is the owner at Lucid Restaurants and Theatre. He is a Reiki master of 30 years and a philosopher. He has an honors degree in psychology and in philosophy, and he also did a master's in philosophy. Gideon started with a PhD in philosophy, but stopped and decided to write a book. Gideon, tell us more about your book.
Thank you for this opportunity. Yes, it is a very long study that I started on consciousness and awareness. There were certain things in consciousness that did not tally for me. And I started to search amongst ancient scripts and all newer kinds of literature, and came across the whole thing of awareness. It started to make more sense to me if I use the concept of awareness to explain what's actually going on Earth and in our souls. So I started with a PhD in order to do it. But halfway through my research, I realized that, well, not only me, also my study leader, realized that I'm actually busy doing a doctorate, saying that a doctorate means nothing. So it's a contradictus in terms to do a doctorate, because my whole approach is that consciousness, contrary to many Eastern religions and lots of newer ventures, also on academic levels, is my approach that consciousness is actually hiding our inner knowledge, our inner being. And that is in our awareness brain. So yeah, it was a long study to get to a point where I realized that we are all born with an innate knowledge of everything. It sits in our DNA. It sits in everything that we are, even in things, in objects around us. But the big thing that keeps us from this knowledge is precisely consciousness. The biggest reason for that, I think, is that when you are born, you are total awareness. So, by the way, I must just perhaps give a definition of awareness. I found that in Sanskrit, the word for awareness means a state of being without time, without place, without focus, and without movement. That's the state of being that you are in when you are dead, when you're in a coma, when you sleep, when you use plants, when you're in a deep meditation, or if you are an animal. That is a state of knowledge, in inverted commas. I would rather call it wisdom, that is located nowhere. We cannot even say that awareness sits inside you, in your brain. In fact, there are quantum physicists who more and more realize and prove through scientific experiments that awareness, the brain, is actually more of a receiver of this awareness than the source of the awareness. So they use a lot of near-death experiences and even past life regressions to prove actually that our knowledge or wisdom that comes from awareness is not located inside our brains, and that it's not at all linked to our consciousness. Because we, for example, Martin Pistorius, South African, who was in a coma for 12 years, came out of it after 12 years, and he remembered every little detail. He, in fact, told everybody afterwards the fights his mother and father had in front of him about his father saying that this boy of us is just a vegetable and he's eating up all our money. He actually remembered in detail how he was molested by the male nurses. Now, how can you remember things if you're unconscious? How can you move and be dead, declared death, and come back and record and tell about detail that happened while you were dead, while you were unconscious? So then I realized that we have an awareness that's actually linked to a place and a state that has all knowledge. And we can tap into it any moment, but we cannot because we are conscious. The problem with consciousness is that it's actually from a very young age, it is connected with your ego. And that is the big problem. Your ego is necessary to survive in this world, admit it, but it can, through its superior position over awareness, it can become very strong and associated with power, with money, with image, with living in this total illusion and trying to make sense out of it. Whilst on the other hand, our awareness, inner being, is fully aware of every little detail. So yeah, that's just in a big nutshell what my whole book is about.
What is a past life regression?
It's actually also a contradictus in terms with regard to awareness. Because in awareness, there is no time. So we cannot talk about the past life. But I would in that case refer to the multiverse, where you are simultaneously in many different inverted commas times, which are actually rhythms of your soul. You are simultaneously in all of them, all the time, experiencing different levels of being, this being that is without time and space, going through different levels of wisdom. So if I say past life regression, it means that you move your consciousness from the one level to the other level. And that is possible because your consciousness can only be focused on one thing. You cannot be conscious of two things simultaneously. My psychology professor always said to us, you students are an absolute proof that we are always in a hypnotic state. And that was actually a joke, but it is very true. We always not aware or not conscious, rather, of everything simultaneously. We can focus only on one thing. And when you do past life regression, the person helping you to do that is actually shifting your focus of consciousness from one state of being to another state of being. And that is what I regard as past life regression.
What is alchemy?
Alchemy is absolute amazing transformation. The alchemists were very remarkable people. They were looking for that material that can bring you eternal youth, that can bring you eternal life. And in the process of looking for that stuff, that object, they explore many, many very interesting artifacts and chemical substances. They believed that a prima materia was the basis of everything, and from that everything came, and everything goes back to that. They in fact referred to the white gold, and that is the gold in inverted commas of the soul. How to attain that, how to produce that, was their ultimate focus and purpose. But we look back now at all those amazing things that they did, and we realize that the alchemical process is actually the process that you go through in the process of looking for the prima materia. So it's not so much the finding of the prima materia, it's more the alchemical process is more who and what you become in the process of looking for it. Now we all are constantly in an alchemical process. You start off at a new work. You work yourself up to a process where you are a master of the whole process and everything that makes this company tick over. That is not the purpose of an alchemical transformation. The process is actually about who did you become since you started till where you are now. What happened to your soul? What did you become? And that is an alchemist. An alchemist is a person who searched for something, and in the process, it helps him to become more and more who he is or she is deep down. And that's my link with alchemy.
So, as I understand it, the prima materia or the philosopher's stone is actually that which you refer to as the source of all knowledge. Is that correct?
No, I wouldn't say that. For me, knowledge is an intellectual thing that can be verified, observed, and seen, and thought and experienced. Wisdom, on the other hand, is a feeling, a mood that you just have, and usually in your gut. So knowledge, I think, is busy phasing out. We have all this absolute amazing knowledge, but look at the state of this world. Why we have all this knowledge and we still do not have a cure for cancer. We have all the knowledge and we cannot certain things and emotions and human relationships, we cannot understand them and explain them. So knowledge, you know, Horkheimer was a great philosopher. And in 1965, he wrote a book, The End of Reason. And he actually predicted that by 1980, there will be no universities left because knowledge is going to disappear, because people are going to realize the total illusion that knowledge is. Now, I know that's going against the grain of a lot of people, but I think it's time that we also open our eyes and not uphold our old system just for the sake of upholding this old system. We need to open our eyes for the new, and the new does not lie in knowledge and in science. It actually lies in allowing channeling to take place through you.
Is knowledge a facet of the mind and wisdom a facet of the heart, or is that an oversimplification?
It can be a simplification, but it's a beautiful one. Yes, the mind is the source of knowledge because it works with the on the basis of logic. You cannot understand something if it's not logical. Our alternative to science is quantum physics. What is the difference? Science, the purpose of science is to predict and to control. We do get into situations now where we cannot predict and control anymore. And that is why we have to start thinking of another way of discovering what is actually going on. I want to illustrate this with a beautiful example that was given by a very mad quantum physicist in 1948, if I remember correctly. He built a mechanical chicken, and it had feathers and even the smell of a chicken. And he made a film recording of it. He didn't program it, and he let it walk all around on a farmyard. And then there was a chicken pen, and he put little chicks in the chicken pen, and he let the hen loose again. And in the recording, this mechanical chicken walked 90% more towards the little chickens than before. So scientifically, how will we explain that? We cannot. Does that mean, logically spoken, does that mean that the little chickens has got some voodoo type of influence on a machine? Does it mean that a machine actually deep down, without us knowing, has some type of maternal instinct? Or how would you explain this whole thing? What is the logic behind this? We do not have a logic. Now, Quantum physics come in with probabilities. There is the probability that the scientist who built this chicken actually, in his mind, controlled the chicken. There are so many, even in science, what they call the X factor. That is a factor that influences the results, but we cannot say what it is. So science actually acknowledge that they cannot always control everything that happens. So to come back to quantum physics, the probability in quantum physics help us to explore avenues that's beyond logic. And that is the new science. That is where we need to go. And that is where awareness comes in, because we are given insights into probabilities that we would never have arrived at if we used logic.
If quantum physics is explored further, will we ever be able to understand it logically? Or is
No,
it simply a matter of it as a law, it cannot be understood logically?
it cannot be understood logically. And our mind, with its huge attachment, ego, forced it for years and years and years to be regarded as the alma mater, the epitome of being human. But more and more we realize we actually know nothing. We just look at the history of mankind and you just see devastation. You look at the condition of our earth and how it's been littered by so-called intelligent, knowledgeable, logical humans. So I think the big thing is that we need to move away from science and we need to teach our children to be aware, because in that awareness, you sit with a universe of wisdom that's in your cells, in your DNA, embedded through millions of years. And we don't access it. We don't know how, because we are forced to become conscious. And in the process, we destroy our inner being, our relationship with God, with nature, because we so much want to be individuals that's being recognized by the world as totally magnificent. No, that's a total illusion.
Going back to the topic of alchemy, can the alchemical process somehow be circumvented, or are there any shortcuts? And is that a desirable thing to do?
No. And the reason for that is that it's actually so tied up with destiny. I wrote a thing called The Destiny of Free Will. Your choices, you experience your choices as your free will. But it isn't really. There's a brilliant neuroscientist, Morgan Cerf. In fact, he is, I think, one of the most intelligent people on earth because he works from his gut. And just a little bit of background is that he was a hacker in Europe who went to the major banks and said to them, okay, you pay me so much and I will show you how I hack your system. and then you can safeguard yourself. And he made a hell of a lot of money with that. Banks would get him in, and he will hack their system, show them how he did it, and they could stop that. But that whole thing made him interested in, why do people hack? What makes them hack? Because some of those people were very rich IT specialists. They didn't need the money. And then he became interested in motivations in your brain. What motivates you to do something? And what an amazing man. He actually then studied medicine and became a neurophysiologist. And he has this famous experiment where, under an open brain operation, where the person is totally conscious, he would implant pins in certain places in the brain that's linked to a machine. And then he asked the guy to press a green or a red button. And then he recorded where in the brain does the red and the green firings take place. Then he asked this guy to please choose whether he wants to press the green or the red button. And he was surprised that 6 seconds before the guy decides to press the green button, the green cells fired up. So where does that message come from? Who decides? You experience that you make a decision, but a decision is made 6 seconds before you realize that you are making a decision, or that a decision has been made. So that brings the whole thing of free will in a very bad light, because it means that we actually have no free will. Everything is received from wherever into our brains, and we experience that we make a choice. But it's not true. We actually it runs according to the lines of destiny. Your choices are synchronized with your destiny. So the alchemical process is destiny. You cannot get a shortcut. You cannot make it faster or slower. You have to walk according to what your destiny has for you installed.
Gideon, are there any other topics you'd like us to cover?
Many. But yeah, there are many new things that's coming to mind that can be discussed, but I think that is a whole new podcast. I think I basically have given an idea of my approach to awareness, and how we can teach our children better how to be in tune with rhythm and not so much be a slave of time.
For all of our listeners, Gideon has a blog that will be linked below. Please check it out and tell us what other topics you'd like us to cover in any future podcasts. Gideon, thank you so much for coming on.
It is a big pleasure. Thank you.